Hello again, Gills fans. Welcome back to the latest episode of Gills in the Blood TV. It's Thursday, which means it's match preview day. And I'm pleased to say that tonight I'm joined by Liam Connolly. I'll put his Twitter details on the description at the end of this video. He is part of the very well-run MK1 podcast, so I'll put the Twitter handle for that in as well. If you want to go and check them out, find anything out about them, potentially might hear some stuff about us in the next couple of days as well. But yeah, first of all, thanks to Liam for coming on.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for having me, Matt. I say, try to keep the MK1 podcast well run. Do our best.
No, that's fine. It doesn't matter at all. We're all here to talk about our football clubs, aren't we? So, and just need to remind everyone before we crack on that these videos are now in association with Man v Fat Football. So if you are in the local area, want to lose a little bit of weight and play football with like-minded individuals, then you can sign up to the Gillingham and the Chatham leagues. Use the code Gills in the Blood and you will get a big discount on your subscription. It will just cost you £1. But let's get straight into tonight's video. There is enough now to look at form in the last six in the league. So that is what we're going to do. Gills, solitary win in their opening half a dozen games this season. That came against Morecambe. There's been a couple of draws, a couple of defeats as well. Sorry, 3 draws, 2 defeats. MK Dons absolutely flying over the last 6. There's a solitary defeat. There's 3 wins and 2 draws. They've taken 11 points from the last 18 available. At home and on the road, Gills have only played the twice at the Priestfield because the Charlton game was called off on the 4th of September. But we are unbeaten. It's a draw and a win. That draw came against last season's beaten playoff finalist Lincoln City. And for MK Dons on the road, undefeated, but haven't won. Draw, 3 points from 9 available. But you've taken some points off some really good sides already, I think, this season, haven't you, Liam? You played... I've written down, you've taken points off Bolton, who were 3rd. You've taken points off Accrington, who were 6th. And you've also taken points off Pompey, 11th. But then you have to factor in that you've also taken points off Charlton and Ipswich, who, despite languishing in the bottom 4, they're probably going to prove to be good results the longer the season goes on. I can't see either side ended up down there. Can you?
No. Ipswich have got so much quality. I think it's taken a little while for them to click. And of course, with Charlton, I've always been a big fan of their recruitment team, of Steve Gallen especially. And they got good quality players. So, yeah, I'm sure it'll click at some point. But, yeah, for example, the Bolton game you mentioned, that was a game we really should have won. Like, we were 3-2 up going to the 93rd minute or something stupid. And then a stupid mistake happens, and I think Baptiste gets a tap in. So it should be even better than it actually is. But, yeah, it's been a really good start. We can't really ask for much more, to be honest.
Yeah, especially considering the teams that you've had to play already as well. I think there's probably only Wigan, along with yourselves, that have played such a collection of sides that I think plenty of people were saying would be in and around the top 2, the top 6, the top 8 come the season's end. So yeah, you can't really complain too much. In terms of the Gills, took a point off Lincoln first day of the season. That was a decent point on the face of it. Probably should have won it second half. We took a point off Wimbledon, who were 4th. We definitely didn't deserve it. It was one of the biggest smash and grabs I can recall watching the Gills. We were absolutely shocking for 97 and 98 minutes. And then a big deflected leveller with 10 men sent the away fans into delirium in the new player lane, which was quite nice. And a creditable draw last week after the break with Burton Albion, who've started very solidly again under Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank. So, and this is all while Gills have probably had a squad that's not been anywhere near fully fit. So I'm trying to stay positive. It is only 1 win, but we've only conceded more than once in a game in the league once. That was at Shrewsbury, when again we completely ran out of steam because we had people that were playing. We probably had 5 of the 11 that ended on the pitch that weren't fit purely because they just had to play. Verdane Oliver shouldn't have even travelled, but he was the only fit striker and he had to play with a twisted ankle, which is never good. But I'm not trying to make excuses. We are where we are in the table because we got a certain amount of points, and we've only got 6. You've got 11 because you picked up more points and more wins than us. So, but I'm starting to feel more positive in terms of the Gills. I think we've got a decent squad. Maybe we could have got another senior left back in instead of one of the lone midfielders. But I did say, and I think I've done a little recording for the MK1 podcast, that last Tuesday in the much maligned EFL trophy win at Colchester, and certainly again on Saturday at Burton, it felt like a Gillingham performance. It felt like a Steve Evans team performance where we was in your face. We was hard to play against. And we created plenty as well, which is good to see. We've changed the system the last 2 because we've managed to get Charlie Kelman in on loan from QPR, which has given us a different type of striker. We've been running essentially with Verdane Oliver and John Akindi since December of last year because Dominic Samuel tore a thigh muscle. right off the bone or something, and then he was released in the summer. So it gives us a different option. It gives us a different way to play. But looking at MK Dons, Liam, there's been some really impressive starts. Mo Issa was the one that jumped off the page for me in the summer. I said if you play him as a centre forward, he'll score plenty of goals. He's got 3 and 5 already. But I think the surprise for me has probably been Troy Parrott. I think he's been really good. Couple of goals, assists, been involved in everything good that you do. Indirect assist, I suppose, for the winner on Saturday as well, isn't it? It's him that breaks from the corner, travels up the pitch, and then plays a really good ball left-hand side for Scott Twine, who then gets Ethan Robson in, who's arriving like an express train to tap it home. And that, again, it's another good win. But your recruitment just looks really good. You look like you've got good options all over the pitch. Fisher in goal, Harry Darling, O'Reilly, Twine, McEachran, Waters. That's just a few that I've named. I've already mentioned Issa, and I've also mentioned Troy Parrott. I have to mention Dean Lewington, 700 career games for the club is absolutely astonishing, regardless whether you like, dislike MK Dons, regardless whether you like, dislike Dean Lewington. It's a phenomenal achievement for any footballer, and you have to tip your hat to Dean Lewington. But what did you make of the summer recruitment briefly, and also, like I say, you start to the season again, just in a little bit more detail?
Yeah, recruitment wise, I think we are on quote on the podcast saying it's probably been our best summer ever in terms of recruitment. And obviously, we're a fairly new club, but I couldn't think of another window where we've done that well in terms of signing players. You mentioned a lot of them there. Mo Ice, I believe club record fee, has an absolutely terrific start so far. He picked up a groin injury against Accrington, which is a shame. There's a potential we could come back for the Gillingham game, but if he is back, he won't be 100%. So that's going to be an interesting situation to monitor. Yeah, fingers crossed for you on that front. But either way, I think we showed on Saturday against Pompey that Mo Ice, even if he is missing, we can still win games. I think actually you mentioned Troy Parrott. He's been an absolute revelation up front. He's just doing everything that we had from Carlton Morris when he was here before he joined Barnsley. He's a hard-working player who, will get goals, but also will get assists. So we all over the pitch and basically be a nuisance. And in that one striker formation, which we were on Saturday, it really works quite well. And I think if he had played against Cheltenham away at the previous weekend when everyone was on international break, probably got 3 points there as well. We probably would have been second or even top of the league. So yeah, it's been a brilliant start. Recruitment's been excellent. We're speaking to Liam Sweeting, who's the sporting director. You can just tell he's switched on bloke who knows what he's doing. Of course, he works very closely with Russell Martin when he was at the club in terms of recruitment, and now he's got the job pretty much full time to himself. Of course, he does communicate with Liam Manning from time to time, but it's mostly on Sweeting to bring these players in, and the players that he's brought on have been absolutely terrific. Ethan Robson's been a bit of a castaway for some clubs. Of course, he had a really good start. He had a good season against Blackpool last year, getting promotion to the Championship, and we're sent down here. And we kind of said on the podcast that he's going to have that quality and character that we need for the squad in terms of trying to build this promotion-winning team. In terms of he's experienced it, he knows what it takes to do that. And even if he wasn't on the pitch for some of it, that doesn't really matter because football's more than that these days. And as you can tell, some of the characters you listed off, Harry Darling, Dean Lewington, they're leaders from the back and they're very good communicators, especially Harry Darling. You need those sort of players in your squad who are going to order people around in some senses, but also keep structure. And especially at home recently, we've provided a really good structure for getting 2 back-to-back clean sheets, which is something that we've really been missing over the past seasons of what's cost us games, especially last season where we were just so wasteful. We're giving goals away. Shrewsbury away, for example, Blackpool away. They're games we really shouldn't have lost, but we did because we were just poor. And this season, we're actually winning those games, and that's why we're so far at the table this early in the season. And that's the start's been excellent, as you mentioned, Matt. The only game we lost Sunderland, Manning hadn't taken a training session, and it wasn't even his team that started. It was Ray Lewington who put that team out. So the fact that he hasn't actually lost a game since he started, actually controlling them and physically taking training session with them says a lot about the man himself. And speaking to one of the Belgian football journalists, Sven, on him and understanding a bit more about his character, you could just tell that he's a really switched on bloke as well. For guys who are Sweeting, but also he's a lot more reserved than Russ. He's a friendly bloke, and he's not one that's going to sit behind the cameras, but he's also not going to play up for the cameras. He'd rather just focus on his football and focus on what the team's doing on the pitch. and let the other people do the talking, much like us, I suppose, in terms of the
Yeah,
podcast.
definitely.
So that's what kind of what we want, really. I suppose the classic football fan, as long as you're winning, no one really cares what happens.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, we had it
Yeah,
levelled at us last season about how we played a game, but if you've got more goals than the other team, and we had, dare I say it, we did it against you at the Priestfield. We've done it the last 2 seasons. You've probably had 2/3 of the ball at the very least. I think last year you had about 72% possession at our place, but like you said, you kept switching off defensively. I think you gave away a soft penalty. Then I think there was one long ball that you didn't deal with a flick on, and then I think there was two defenders essentially ran into each other, didn't they? And then Dane Oliver went through one
yeah,
on one. And then I think he switched off for the corner as well, that ultimately won us the game when Connor Ogilvie slammed one in. But you certainly seem to be rectifying them issues. And also, if you go in the other way and you do continue to have that much ball and create that many chances, then if you are solid defensive, clearly you're going to win more games than you're going to lose. But that brings me nicely on to Liam Manning, because I must admit, didn't really know anything about him. And obviously, it came as a bit of a shock to anyone who follows, League One football. I mean, I co-host the third tier now, and we actually had Jonathan Harries on Monday evening, and he was talking about Ethan Robson in glowing terms as well. And we had Graham, who's a Sunderland fan, said it didn't really work for Ethan when he was there, and then, like you say, he went to Blackpool and did okay. But Jonathan said he's quickly sort of developing into one of the unsung heroes. And again, it comes back to, you might not notice him for 90 minutes because he's just diligently going about his work and doing his job without sort of too much fanfare and spotlight on him, which is what you want in certain areas. You have your goal scorers and your flair players that
yeah,
everyone takes notice of, but you need, like you say, your Ethan Robsons and your Harry Darlings and those players that, maybe not as pretty on the eye, but you have to find the balance regardless of whether you play long ball or whether you play possession football. But Liam Manning, tell me more about him. You already have, which is brilliant. Like I say, because I don't think many people sort of knew much about his background, because he's not really, a common name even in League One circles.
yeah. So I suppose a good way, well, not really a good way, but a fair way to do it is compare it to the previous regime, Russell Martin. So Liam Manning was basically brought in, from our understanding, to continue on with Russell Martin's work. But with Manning, of course, every other manager, they're in their own little twist on certain things. So Manning's twist is playing with purpose. Now, essentially, what that means is, from the Don side you saw last season, it's still passing around the back in some senses, but it's always looking to be a bit more direct and purposeful when going forward. Now, you'll often see, if it is indeed going to be the 3-4-1-2 on Saturday, which, if everyone's fit, that's the ideal formation realistically. You'll see Scott Twine, the number 10, really dropping into really some really key areas and making himself available so he can drive through. And essentially, Ethan Robson and, say, Matt O'Reilly will drop back a little bit more. So that allows for not only Twine to get a bit more space, but the strikers to make some runs. And typically, you'll see a longer balls played forward to the likes of Troy Parry, who can bring it down and do things like that. So it's essentially, it's little tweaks in the Russell Martin system, but it's ultimately the same mold. And it's the way it's come across so far is that Russell Martin built his team and did all the groundwork, but Liam Manning sort of tweaked it a little bit and actually made it really good. So in a very strange way, it's been a bit of a blessing that Russell Martin did get taken away from Milton Keynes Dons to go to Swansea, because they've allowed to bring in, Manning and his coaching staff and his philosophies. And I think in some senses the recruitment from Sweeting, and I suppose in parts Martin, have really helped us out. And we've seen the team really galvanise together, and the fans also, based on the situation that's dealt with them. And essentially they've been brought into a team where the manager's just gone after 2 days before the start of the season, whatever stupid it was. And yeah, I think it's just worked out. And I suppose obviously the goal is to continue this for the whole season, which is easier said than done. But I certainly wouldn't put it past these lot to do well, especially in the Manning.
No, you've certainly made a great start, and like I've said, you can only emphasise that point with the fact that you played some of those teams that should be up and around it come the end of the season. So very promising, and I'm glad you said that, because it means it looked like I knew what I was talking about in the third tier, because I said that I thought we'd come in Manning and was clever enough to realise that he's got a good squad and he's got plenty of good players, and he was only going to just have to tweak a couple of things here and there, rather than you get some managers that come in and go, right, I want to put my stamp on it, so I'm going to rip it up and start again, which sometimes works, sometimes doesn't, and that's fine. Each manager's their own, but I think it's subtly very clever from Manning that he's realised that Russell Martin was building something, and my only thing with Russell Martin when he left, and everyone seemed on Twitter, it seemed to be that, oh, MK Dons are going to struggle. I thought, well, hang about. He finished 13th last season. He's building, but it's not like he was title contenders, playoff contenders, really. So was it really going to be as big a loss? And at the moment, it doesn't look like it's any loss at all, which is great from your point of view, because Manning's just come in and seamlessly taken over and probably improved things. I know it's only over a small compartment of the season, so obviously you've got to judge him properly if we get to Christmas and you're still there, and then the end of the season. But it's certainly a promising start. But in terms of your team news moving to Saturday, you've already mentioned Mo Eason might be unavailable because of a muscle problem. But how do you think Manning will set the team up with whoever's available?
Yeah, well, I think that particular injury of Isa is gonna tell us a lot. I feel if he's not available, which I think is the likely situation, they'll go to the 3-4-2-1. So that'll likely see Matt O'Reilly be a little bit more advanced than he has been this season, which at times has worked, other times it's been a bit lackluster because Matt O'Reilly's been much better from deep this season in terms of picking out players. And as I mentioned, it's allowed Twine to be a bit more free, have a bit more freedom on the ball and score the goals he has and create chances he has. But yeah, we'll like to see Troy Parrott up front regardless of what happens. He's brilliant against Pompey on Saturday, and again, just showed why the quality he has and how Ipswich currently utilising very well. Outside of that, the same back five, I imagine. The right wing back position is a bit itchy at the moment because you've got Tanai Watson, who has come in and they've done okay, but we brought in Peter Kioso, who I believe was Manning's only signing since he came in at right wing back, and he's had a good debut against Cheltenham. Saved the goal off the line.
At Northampton last season.
Yes, yeah, and we got him in from Luton. Yeah, he had a really good start against Cheltenham. As I mentioned, saved the goal off the line. Was really good defensively, so we could see a bit of rotation there. So I'm not too sure who will start there. My money would be on Kioso, but it's hard to tell at the moment. But the rest of the back four in O'Hora, Darling, Lewington, and Daniel Harvey will probably stay the same.
Okay.
As mentioned, Robson, O'Reilly with Twine in front of them. But yeah, the big question is who's going to be up front. My money would be on Parrott on his own, which could see the likes of Hiram Boateng get a start, or it could see Charlie Brown come back into the fold. But fingers crossed in our perspective that Moise is fit, so we go back to the 3-4-1-2. And yeah, hopefully he scored a few goals for us this weekend.
Only a few, lovely. Yeah, Gills, I think, have got as close to a full squad to pick from for the first time this season. I think the only doubt's over Ryan Jackson, who's still struggling with his thigh or hamstring problem that he picked up at Shrewsbury a couple of weeks ago. Daniel Phillips returns this week from suspension, so I think we've got pretty much everyone to choose from. But I didn't go to Burton at the weekend, unfortunately. But from everything that I've read and the people that I spoke to who did the bits for our channel over the weekend, it was a very good performance on the whole. The frustration obviously was switching off so quickly after the interval and basically ruining the team talk, because I'm sure Steve Evans would have said, be solid for a quarter of an hour, and we were solid for about a quarter of a minute, unfortunately. So, but that's a game we'd have lost 3 weeks ago. We'd have had people that would have been blowing after an hour. We'd have had no options. I think we started the first 5 games of the season. We had 3 teenagers, or two of the 3 on the bench for every game, and they should be nowhere near the squad at the moment. You know, you can play them in AFL Trophy games. You can put them on the bench in the Carling Cup. That's showing my age. Carabao Cup. I'll go back further. I'll go Rumbelows, Worthington Cup. But yeah, so it's nice to be able to have a strong bench. So for me, if it was my choice, I wouldn't change it. Why change it? You know, what's probably been one of your best league performances of the season, aside from 30 seconds, and we could have got on and won it afterwards. I think the keeper made a couple of saves from Carriol. Dane Oliver was unlucky with a header that got flicked on, and Jamie Cummings helped us out a couple of times with a couple of saves the other end, but. Like I said, it was a Steve Evans type performance. So for me, I'd go Jamie Cumming in goal, back 4, Robbie McKenzie, Max Amar, Jack Tucker, and David Tatonda from right to left. And then I'd go Alex McDonald, Daniel Adseed, Carl Dempsey, and Mustafa Carriol from right to left in a second bank of 4. And then for Dane Oliver with Charlie Kelman up front. And I probably wouldn't change the bench too much either. I toyed with the idea of putting Ryan Jackson on there, but we've got obviously Aaron Chapman to be the backup keeper. Reece Bennett can cover right back and centre half, so I'd leave him on there, give Jackson another week, because we have got to play Tuesday as well.
Yeah.
Because we've got that rearranged Charlton game. Stuart O'Keefe, I'd put Daniel Phillips on the bench in the expense of Ollie Lee, purely because he's a number 10, and if we're going to play 4-4-2, there's probably not such a need for him. And I'd leave Ben Reeves on there, who can play that role as well if we did need to switch the system. And then Danny Lloyd and John Akindi would complete my 7. So it's nice to be able to sit here as a Gills fan and look at the substitutes bench and think, yeah, we've actually got people on there that if we do need to change the game, either defensively or offensively, we have got them choices now. Because I laughed a few times and said, obviously we all do the fan hub thing now, and last season, certainly from January onwards, the Gills one was so easy to pick. We had such a settled side. If you was getting less than 10, you was doing something wrong. But most weeks I was getting 10 and 11 because Steve Evans was picking the same core of players. But it's been such a sort of mismatch and sort of hodgepodge of selections this season so far because of the injuries and the COVID problems that we've had since the start of pre-season, that I've sort of been happy if I got 7 out of 11 a few weeks. But
Wow.
the big question before I let you go, and it's always the one that people don't really enjoy answering, because invariably it comes back and bites you on the arse most of the time. Score prediction for Saturday, come 5 o'clock.
Yeah, well, you say that I've got the past few I've got right, to be fair, the past couple of games.
Yeah, I'm not too
This is
bad this
difficult.
season, but then if I
Yeah.
bet on it, it'd clearly go wrong. But
Well,
I think I've
there you
got 4
go.
of the 6 correct.
Oh, that's pretty good, to be fair. Yeah. Yeah, this is always a difficult game for Dons, I think, going to Gills. I think if you pick a bogey side, going to Gillingham is pretty much up there. I think the classic saying, you win your games at home and take anything you can get away, is kind of what we've been going by this season, clearly by the results. So I'm gonna say 1-1.
Fair enough. Who's going to get you goal?
Scott's one free kick, of course.
Obviously, because Mo Ice might not be playing. So, right, I toyed between that and one other score, and I'm going to go with the other score, and that's the slightly more positive one, and that is because, and Jonathan said the same thing on the third tier on Monday. He said if you get out of there with a point, because it is a bogey ground, he'd be more than happy, and then you go to the next one. I just think last season you struggled to deal with Dane Oliver. You struggled to deal with how we played. The same the season before as well. I think Mika Mandron scored in that game as well. Another, big
I went to
target
that
man
game. Yeah.
type. Yeah, we beat you 3-1. Alex Gilby scored an absolute belter in that game, if I remember.
Worldy
Didn't he
goal.
essentially
Yeah.
just like backheel it over his own head and then run onto it and smash it in the far corner?
Yeah, that Twitter clips are going around today and the other day as well.
Is the one still
That
going
goal.
around of Dele Alli when he said he was coming to Gills to claim 3 points a few seasons ago?
You probably find it somewhere.
Anyway, we've gone off at a slight tangent. I'm going to back the Gills to nick it by 2-1. I'm going to have to back for Dane Oliver to score now that we've got width in offensive areas. I think it brings him to life. We've had to play the diamond a lot and be very narrow this season up until the last couple of games, and it's just not suited for Dane at all. He wants people. You all know how many goals that Jordan Graham set up for him last season. It was get it out wide, get balls into the box, and let Big V attack it. So I'm going to back for Dane Oliver to get one. And purely because he came so close to scoring at least twice on Saturday, law of averages says one has to go in for Mustafa Carriel. So I'm going to back them two to score in a very narrow, very nervy 2-1 Gillingham win. Right. Liam, that's been brilliant. Really enjoyed that. Plenty of insight for Gills fans to get their teeth into over the next couple of days before we kick off on Saturday afternoon. So appreciate you coming on. Like I say, Gills fans and MK Dons fans, I will put Liam's details in the description at the end of this video and the details for the podcast as well. Obviously, if you're an MK Dons fan, I'm sure you all know Liam. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I'm never sure. I say the same about myself. But yeah, and don't forget to keep finding us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Get commenting down below with your score predictions. Get commenting on Facebook with your team lineups and who you think is going to be doing what for both sides. Don't forget to keep checking out Fan Hub. Download the app. There's always tickets going around from everyone, from myself, from Liam, from all the content creators, which means you can skip the queue. I'll be back Saturday for a match day live with Boz and hopefully Stocky as well. But until next time, enjoy the rest of your week and up the Gills.